Welcome, I'm Jon Caldara, president of the Independence Institute and your devil's advocate. A little later in the program, we'll take a look at handguns, concealed weapons on college campuses. It's now legal in Colorado. What are you going to do about it? But first, the former editorial editor from the Gazette, a good friend of mine, Paige, with a terrific outfit, AFP Colorado, Americans for Prosperity, down in here in Colorado, down in Colorado Springs.
Well, yeah, both Jeff and I, Jeff Crank, who's the state director, I'm the deputy. We're both based in Colorado Springs, but we have statewide responsibilities, so we really count on other groups and individuals like yourselves to be our eyes and ears elsewhere. It's only an hour south, John.
Yeah.
Come on.
Oh my God.
It's not Siberia. I know that's
Siberia.
I know that's the perception here in Denver.
I live in Boulder. Wouldn't you say the most polarized towns are Colorado Springs and Boulder?
Yeah,
I mean,
they're
the flip
opposites.
side.
And we're working on that. We want to be the anti-Boulder in Colorado Springs. We're working hard on that.
I want to be the Colorado Springs and Boulder. All right, you're launching a brand new project that I'm really excited about, monkeywrenchingamerica.com. Tell me a little bit about this.
Yeah, monkeywrenchingamerica.com is just a site where we're exposing the job-killing activities of radical environmentalists. You know, the book The Monkey Wrench Gang was done by Edward Abbey back in the 70s, and it basically lionized people who were going out. Back then it was to blow up billboards and burn down things and kind of playful.
I don't remember.
You don't remember
I had
Monkey Wrench Gang?
better things to do
in
the 70s.
Well,
I was chasing skirts in the 70s.
It's a very influential book, and still in the extremist environmental community, it's still very influential. So we try to turn their tables because though, you know, today's monkey wrenchers, the most extreme element, of course, are eco-terrorists of Ted Kaczynski ilk or Earth Liberation Front. But monkey wrenching has become respectable. I mean, we've got a monkey wrencher in the White House right now, and he just monkey wrenched something called the Keystone XL pipeline. So monkey wrenching goes on.
Let's grab that one out because a week or so ago, former Secretary of State, former Secretary of the Interior, Gail Norton, was here with me, a good friend, and she went through the Keystone pipeline. What a simple, important thing this was. And now I'm leaving the studio today facing nearly $4 a gallon gas prices. And I wonder, when you're on a tight budget, how you're going to make this happen, how you can have this type of environmental policy, this type of energy policy, and still be affordable. Here in Colorado, we've got a 30% renewable mandate. That is, our electricity has to come from renewables.
Right.
Doesn't include nuclear. Doesn't include hydroelectric, which I thought was renewable as well. So give me some of the stories. So monkey wrenching takes a look at that and flips it. How so?
Well, we're looking at again, the job-killing activities of the extreme green movement. Here in Colorado, for instance, we've had a battle over the Roan Plateau, drilling on there. They didn't stop drilling, but they've pared back what was planned on there. They're trying right now, one group, Wild Earth Guardians, that we just profiled in a report.
Wild Earth Guardians?
Yeah, they're based here in Denver. They've got offices
in Santa Fe. Sounds like a spiritual thing. Is it some sort of Wiccan outfit? They sit around and chant, have a bonfire?
There is a spiritual element, I think, to extreme environmentalism. I think it is really a religion to some people. But one of the things we published on the site is called Monkey Wrenching the Courts. As most people know if they read the papers, almost every day there's a lawsuit. There's a lawsuit settlement. Greens are suing constantly. They use the courts as a major avenue for advancing their agenda. So we took one group. We looked at Wild Earth Guardians, and they've just been around since 2008 in their present sort of form. And they've been suing at a rate of about one lawsuit per week since 2008, and they get paid to do it. They recover their legal fees through something called the Equal Access to Justice Act, which basically allows them to recoup their fees for their lawsuits. And this same group that's suing the Forest Service, that's suing EPA constantly, it gets 40% of its funding from the federal government in the form of grants. So it's a great racket. They're suing, they're influencing policy through saturation litigation. And at the same time, they're being subsidized in a roundabout way by getting their legal fees restored. And in this particular group, they're living off government grants from the same agencies they're suing.
I don't think people quite have an idea how this game is played.
Oh, and it is a game.
It is, and that now that regulatory agencies, often federal and occasionally state agencies, need to sign off on anything that a company wants to do. If they want to put in a power transmission, if they want to put in some sort of waterway, if they want to do anything, they want to poke a hole in the ground to get natural gas, clean burning natural gas, you have to go through all these new regulations.
Sure.
At each point, the Greens know when to complain and tie them up.
Completely.
And tie them up.
Completely.
And tie them up. Or to find an endangered species that might be affected, and then you have to do an environmental study.
It's amazing how often areas that are going to be active in drillings and stuff, they find these very obscure species. They just happen to pop up in the very areas that they're going to do drilling. There's no question that the Endangered Species Act, it's the Endangered Trojan Horse Act. They find a species, and it's really not about saving that animal. It's about taking that animal's habitat or theoretical habitat, removing it from all ways of development. So yeah, they're masters of it. And you know, we have a public process. We make a fetish out of public process at every level of government, but especially the federal government. But do the working people, does the working rancher, does the working commercial fisherman, does the guy who works on the drill rig really show up at these hearings? No, professional green extremism. It's a huge industry. I was just
when you say it's a huge industry,
oh yeah,
I understand that over the last few decades, environmental organizations have realized the best way to put sticks into the spokes of progress is through litigation.
No question.
Through filing complaints. Many of them just public hearing type things that you go out there and they know how to work this system. And so we're spending money if you know, my energy prices are going up and up and up. My electricity prices are going up and up and up. It's not going to get any better, but how do we equate what they're doing to these prices? It doesn't mean that they will always win.
Well, they get a pass. It's interesting. They get a pass. We're looking at the president. We're asking, what has the president done? But what's not calculated is all this litigation. Again, one group, Wild Earth Guardians, just since 2008, we tracked 145 pieces of litigation. That was just stopping at the end of the year. So we're into a new year. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to shut down all coal extraction in Wyoming and the Powder River Basin, trying to basically throw ranchers off the public lands. They've targeted various drilling projects around the West, and they get a pass. What I call the green stream media, and I was a part of it as a journalist, and I used to actually, years ago, I was a member of a group called the Society of Environmental Journalists. If you ever go and check out
the... You freaking commie. I knew it about you.
Then I realized that these people are environmentalists first and journalists second, and that they really carry water for the movement. So it's a huge industry. I can, you know, a guy did a great, the Sacramento Bee did a great investigative series a number of years ago, and they called it Environmentalism, Inc. It is an industry. It's as big and well-funded as a lot of the industries that it purports to watchdog. And we need to watchdog the environmental industry, the environmental advocacy and activism industry, just like we watchdog every other industry. But they get a pass. The media always presumes that they're in the position of strength, that they're doing good work, and they're not always, because a lot of times they're destroying jobs.
Let me play devil's advocate here for a second.
Yeah, sure, of course.
They are environmentalists. If we talk to many of them, they'd say, listen, we're not for cheap power. We're not against it. We're not against using our natural resources wisely, but we want to protect our environment, and this type of damage is hurting the earth, and therefore we're using the tools that the system allows to make sure that it's done correctly. And there's a role for that, isn't there?
Oh, of course there's a role. There's no question that the environmental movement, broadly speaking, has had some incredible benefits, but it's a movement that is relentlessly radical, that can't compromise, and that's where almost a religious element comes into it. So yeah, and it's not just their fault. They're gaming the system. These major landmark pieces of legislation that we have in place, the Endangered Species Act, the Clean Water Act, they're all geared to actually almost encourage litigation as a means of policy making. Instead of compromising, you don't have to compromise if you can find a sympathetic judge here in the West that can close down a vast swath of public and private lands in protection of a species. Plus also the Equal Access to Justice Act, which I mentioned before, it basically was passed in the 80s, and it basically pays litigants to litigate against the federal government.
How does it pay litigants to litigate against the government?
Basically, it was created, interestingly, it was created for small business people and it was designed to let them fight the regulatory power of the government. In a weird role reversal, it's now being used by the Green movement to actually expand the regulatory power of government. Basically, it's up to the discretion of a judge. If you can prove that a litigant is a prevailing party, and in some of these suits, it's very easy to do that, because a lot of the suits that Greens bring aren't on substantive matters. They're not necessarily challenges to the science behind a ruling. It may be procedural rulings. Say the Forest Service misses a deadline on a logging project or something. Anytime that the federal government misses a procedural step in the process, and they miss it all the time because they're big bureaucracies that are slow, a group can come in, sue, make headlines as being the champions of saving the planet.
Let me kick this back to you. Let me see if I'm getting it. So I could be a logger, mean, evil logger who brings down paper, cuts down trees and makes paper and toilet paper and the other things that I like to use. And I'm ready to harvest this crop that I've planted years ago on government lands, and I'm ready to take it. I put in the application, and the feds miss reporting it by a certain date. They don't get back to me in time. Then they finally get back to me and say, go ahead and do it. This team will say, wait a second, you can't
They do it all the time. They've completely shut down almost logging in the Pacific Northwest in defense of the spotted owl, an endangered species. Well, now we find out, this was in 1995 during the Clinton years, they basically killed logging. There's dead communities. I think 12 or 13 counties in Oregon right now are about to file for bankruptcy. They're going broke. There's no jobs in Oregon and Washington in those timber industries. Now we find out that there's another species of owl called the barred owl that's really killing these other owls. It's coming in. It's natural selection, what Darwin called natural selection. So yeah, at any point in the public process, if you're a smart green group, you can gum up the works. You can monkey wrench the process, and that's what it's all about. It's stopping timber sales. Even dead timber sales now, burned trees, dead trees, they're stopping those. There's a suit down in the southeastern part of the country that you can't go into rivers where old logs from logging 50 years ago have sunk and retrieved. You can't go. They're trying to stop going and retrieving logs from the bottoms of rivers in the southeast part of the country. So it's crazy. But again, they're professional environmentalists. They're professional activists.
All right, we got about a minute left.
Yeah.
What do I care? What do I care? So if these greenies want to go spend their time and litigate big, awful, nasty corporations, the hell do I care? Let them do it.
Well, because it's killing jobs. If we're struggling as an economy, and you've got a whole industry that revolves around protesting, blocking everything from the Keystone Pipeline to the use of the West Coast ports to export energy and coal. I mean, we're a struggling economy, and what's often not considered is the anchor that's hanging around this economy by extreme professional environmentalists who do nothing all day but say no to things. When was the last time an environmentalist that you heard said yes to anything? All they do is say no. No to drilling on the Rhone Plateau. No to coal-fired power plants. No even to wind and now solar. They're turning against that because wind farms kill raptors and solar arrays out in the Mojave Desert block the habitat of desert tortoises.
What's the website? People want to get more information.
It's called monkeywrenchingamerica.com. Check it out. We've got original reporting. We've got a blog. We've got news aggregation. I think it will open their eyes to a different side of the environmental movement.
Put it on your must-read every day, monkeywrenching.com. Stay tuned and grab your heat. We're going to talk guns.